This is large fries in America. This is large fries in England. Both from the same company, yet the portion sizes are absolutely astronomical in America.
So here's the UK bread and here's the American bread. Look at that size difference. So this is so soft. You can see how soft it is, and this is just so hard.
If you only watch TikTok, most people will believe that Americans eat chemical-laden bread every day, drink soda by the bucket, and live off ultra-processed food. And Europeans? They eat whole pizzas, drink wine, enjoy fresh bread, and live healthily into old age. Sounds very reasonable. The problem is, the truth is rarely that simple. Yes, many foods in the US have more additives. Yes, portion sizes in the US are often much larger. Yes, many travelers say they feel lighter after eating in Europe. But those same people also overlook the most important question. Are we comparing food, or are we comparing two completely different ways of life? Because behind every hamburger, every loaf of bread, or every soda is an entire system of economy, food, laws, consumer culture, and lifestyle of hundreds of millions of people. So today, let's try to look at everything from a different angle. Maybe after this video, you won't look at the debate about American food or European food in the same old way anymore. Let's get started. Honestly, if you just glance at these videos, it's easy to think that Europeans are overreacting. A burrito as big as a head, a medium-sized drink that feels heavy even when held with both hands, a serving of fries as tall as a small hill, or a slice of pizza that in many places in Europe could be enough for 2 people. But the more I watch, the more I realize something interesting. They are not at all shocked that it's a burger, pizza, or Coca-Cola. Those dishes are also available in Europe. What really left them speechless was the scale. Everything is magnified as if someone just pressed the 200% button before bringing the dish to the table. That's why you'll see many tourists reacting in a similar way.
This is massive! Bad for comparison! Oh my god. That's crazy.
This is why I like America, man. This is why I love America.
America loves you.
This is why I love America. Why is the slice so big?
At the size of this. It is literally bigger than my head.
You see, some people burst out laughing when they received the glass of water. Some thought the restaurant had mistakenly served a dish meant for the whole group. Some even jokingly asked, "Is this a meal for one person or for the whole family?" It sounds funny, but if you grew up in an environment where a meal was always considered just enough, then suddenly faced with a sandwich as tall as a mini building, the first feeling will definitely not be hunger, but confusion. And here's the interesting point. That shock doesn't come from the taste, but from the disrupted expectations. This leads to a very interesting question. Why are portion sizes in the US so large? Do Americans eat more than the rest of the world? Not necessarily. If you pay close attention, many restaurants in the US promote themselves with phrases like greater value, more, supersized, just a few bucks more. In other words, what they are selling is not just food, but also the feeling of getting a lot for the money spent. That is a consumer mindset that has been formed over many decades. And it must be admitted that, psychologically, it is extremely effective. Who doesn't like the feeling of getting a good deal, right?
This is why when everybody comes to America and they're shocked by how big things are, Wendy's, yay, Wendy's in the UK. So this is a small soda. I just got like a cheeseburger combo meal, but this is the small Coke. And this is the small, I got a Frosty. I got to get a Frosty. The small Frosty. Little baby. Little. Small Coke, small Frosty. You can see how skinny the cups are by the way that my fingers wrap around it. And this one, it's like the size of a wrist.
But this is the interesting twist. In many European countries, a meal is designed according to a philosophy that is almost the opposite. The goal is not to impress diners with the size, but to have them eat just enough, feel comfortable getting up, and still have room for a conversation, a cup of coffee, or a dessert. Therefore, when Europeans see a gigantic glass of water or a plate of food piled high like a mountain, what they see is not simply a lot of food. They are seeing a completely different consumer culture. And conversely, many Americans when they come to Europe feel, why are the portions so small? Both sides are surprised, simply because they are carrying very different standards. That's also why I think many videos online are unintentionally missing an important piece. They just show images of two plates side by side and compare them.
This is a Pop-Tart in America, and this is a Pop-Tart in England. They are meant to be exactly the same thing. Look how different they actually look. Looking at the sugars of the American one serving of these, which is both of these, has 31 grams of sugar in, and they are feeding this to kids for breakfast. The British one, 18 grams of sugar, 31 grams versus 18 for the exact same thing. The American one, of course, it has red 40, yellow 6, blue 1 in it. You can see the red 40 in the American one is working overtime. The British one.
But in reality, behind the size of a portion lies a whole story about culture, consumer behavior, and how businesses create value for customers. What do you think? If it's the same price, would you choose a smaller portion with better ingredients? Or a larger portion to feel like you're getting your money's worth? Please share your opinion in the comments. I would love to read different perspectives. And if you find this comparison starting to be more interesting than what TikTok usually tells, don't forget to like and subscribe, because right after this, we will enter the most controversial part. The real difference between American and European food doesn't lie in the size, but in the ingredients themselves. This is when the debate starts to get interesting. Many videos online often place an American pizza next to an Italian pizza and ask, which one is better? Have you tried it, and do you have an answer?
Everybody keeps saying that Italian food in New York is better than Italian food in Italy, but we're in Italy right now. We're going to try some of the best pizza, and we're going to compare it to our spots in New York. This is Neapolitan pizza. I think it's supposed to have a flop.
But in my opinion, that's not the right question. The battle has never been about the pizza. It lies in the things we don't see at first glance. The ingredients. A pizza can look very similar in appearance, all having dough, tomato sauce, and cheese. But what determines the post-meal experience, even how the body reacts, starts from the ingredients behind that layer of crust. Perhaps that's why so many Americans, after coming to Europe, say something similar. The food doesn't look much different, but the feeling after the meal is completely different. And that's when I started to wonder, have we been looking at just the tip of the iceberg? Take, for example, bread. There was a video that made me laugh, but also made me think. A person holds up 2 loaves of bread to compare. One loaf has about 9 ingredients. The other one has up to 25 components.
This is a half loaf of white bread that I got from America. After conversion, this came out to about £2.91. And this is the size of one slice. 1, 2, 3, 13, 14, 15, 24, 25 ingredients are inside of this loaf of bread. In contrast, this Warburton's bread cost me £1.55 for an...
The funny thing is, from the outside, both are just bread. If you don't flip the packaging over, no one would notice the difference. But then the video host posed a very thought-provoking question. If the traditional bread recipe only requires flour, water, yeast, and salt, what are the other 21 ingredients doing? That is not a conclusion, but a question that makes many people start to pay attention to something they had never cared about before. The food ingredient list. And there's an even more interesting point. Many people who moved from the US to the UK or Germany say that what surprised them the most was not the beef or pizza, but the egg yolk.
I need all my Americans right now to stop what you're doing and feast your eyes on this. I was shocked, I was shook. Just wait for it. Would you see? Hold up. Will you look at that level of orange in the yolk? If you live in America, you know that our yolks are pretty much like white. It is a light, pale, pastel yellow, if you will. Look at that orange. And I know, the more orange it is, the more like nutrients it has. It's not even doing it justice. That shit is a bright sunshine tangerine orange I just spilled.
In many videos, they hold up the egg, crack it open, and almost all have the same reaction. Why is the yolk so dark orange? Just a tiny detail, but it creates a feeling that the food is somehow different. Then there are strawberries, cheese, or bread. Many people describe them with the same word, rich in flavor. Of course, flavor is always subjective and also depends on the type of crop, farming methods, or production processes. But it is precisely those repeated experiences that have kept the debate between American and European food from ever cooling down. But that's not all. Now let's move on to the most controversial topic, food additives. This is also where I think we need to look at it very calmly. On the internet, comparison charts often appear claiming that some preservatives, colorings, or food processing methods are allowed in the US, but are restricted or not accepted in some European countries. That immediately generates millions of comments like, so who is right, America or Europe? But perhaps the better question is, why do the two systems set different standards? Because behind each regulation, it's not just a matter of health, but also agricultural productivity, supply chains, production costs, and how each region balances safety, cost, and the ability to supply hundreds of millions of people. This perspective is often overlooked when reaction videos focus solely on the shocking elements. So, if you put two loaves of bread that look almost identical in front of you, one with 4 ingredients and one with 25 ingredients, which one would you choose? Or, if two pizzas look very similar but are made from two completely different ingredient systems, are they still the same type of food in the true sense? I really want to hear your opinions, because this is not a story with just one correct answer. And right after this, we will move on to what I believe is the trump card of the entire debate. Perhaps the issue has never been with the bread, the egg, or the slice of pizza, but rather with the reasons that led Americans to make those choices in the first place. And when you understand that, you will look at the comparison between American and European food in a completely different way. I think this is the part that the internet often overlooks, and it's also the reason why many discussions about American food quickly turn into unfair criticisms. We often hear things like, Americans eat too much processed food. Why don't they cook for themselves? Or, just eat cleaner. It sounds simple, but if we stop there, we are missing a much bigger picture. What I want to say here is, Americans are not stupid, and for the most part, they also understand what good food is. The real question is not whether they know or not. The question is, are they qualified to choose or not? And just by changing the question, the entire debate immediately shifts direction. Try putting yourself in the shoes of someone who has to leave home at 6 in the morning, work 8 to 10 hours, not to mention the commute, and then come home to take care of the kids or do extra work in the evening. At that point, they have two choices in front of them. One side is buying fresh food, preparing the ingredients, cooking, and cleaning up, which can take more than an hour. The other option is a frozen meal or takeout, which only takes a few minutes to prepare. If you were in that situation, which option would you choose? It's no longer a matter of awareness or nutritional knowledge, it's a matter of time. And sometimes, time is an even greater luxury than money. An even more thought-provoking point is that in many places, high-quality, fresh food often costs significantly more than processed products. This is also reflected in many comments from Americans who appeared in the reaction videos we just watched. They do not deny that they want to eat healthier, but they also admit that convenience and cost are very hard factors to overlook. This is the twist that I find most interesting. We often think that ultra-processed food is popular because people like it. But in many cases, it is popular because it fits the rhythm of modern life. A choice repeated every day gradually becomes a habit rather than a preference. And there's one detail that I find very thought-provoking. Many tourists say that when they go to Europe, they find eating and drinking more enjoyable. Correct. But let's look at another aspect. In many European cities, walking, stopping by small grocery stores, and buying fresh ingredients for each meal is quite common. Meanwhile, in many areas of the United States, life is organized very differently. Greater distances, more reliance on cars, and purchasing food weekly or in bulk to save time. Two different ways of life will create two different consumption patterns. Therefore, if we only look at the frozen food box and conclude that the buyer does not care about health, perhaps that is a hasty judgment. That's also why I always prefer to look at issues from a systemic perspective rather than an individual one. A system will influence the way people make decisions every day. When everything is designed to prioritize speed, convenience, and time saving, many people will act accordingly. This does not only happen in the United States, but can also occur in any country with similar living conditions. In your opinion, if you had to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, would you be willing to spend an extra hour each evening just to cook a meal from scratch? I would love to hear your answers in the comments, as this is a topic with no absolute right or wrong. And right now, we will move on to another very interesting twist. Because if many people still think of Europe as a perfect model, they might be surprised to learn that Europe itself has hidden corners that the internet rarely mentions. At this point, I want to turn the tables a bit. After more than 10 minutes of watching a series of reaction videos, it's easy to conclude that Europe is the perfect model while America is the one always being compared. But is that really true? The more I watch those videos, the more I notice a very interesting detail. The internet often has a very strange habit, taking the worst version of America to compare with the best version of Europe. It's like comparing a roadside fast food restaurant in some city with a centuries-old family pizza shop in Naples and declaring which one is better. It sounds reasonable when watched on TikTok for a few seconds, but if you look at it more broadly, that comparison is clearly unfair. And then I watched the videos filmed in Ireland. To be honest, I was quite surprised. The spice boxes, party boxes, or the containers filled with fries, fried chicken, fried onions, meat, and all kinds of sauces made me burst out laughing. If you just cut those few seconds and post them online, many people might even think this is America. Not to mention, some traditional dishes like fish and chips also have very large portions, especially in tourist areas. That's what surprised me. Large portions are not an exclusive specialty of the United States. It's just that it appears in different forms, in different cultures. This leads us to an even more interesting twist. When we talk about European food, we are inadvertently lumping together more than 20 countries with very different histories, cultures, and eating habits into one box. Italy is not like Germany. Germany is not like France. France is even less like Ireland. Just like in the US, it would be very difficult to say that Texas, California, New York, and Florida represent the same culinary style. Yet on social media, many videos only need a pizza in Italy to represent all of Europe, while a supersized burger in Texas is considered representative of the entire United States. If you think about it, that's quite a lazy comparison because it simplifies a story that is much more complex. This is probably the insight I like the most in this entire topic. Actually, there is no such thing as European food. There are only dozens of different cuisines, dozens of different food production systems, and dozens of different ways of life. There are regions in Europe famous for fresh food, local ingredients, and moderate portions. But there are also places that prefer fried foods, fast food, large portions, and very energy-dense meals. When viewed this way, the picture immediately becomes much more balanced. And I think that's the fair approach. Instead of trying to find a winner in a competition that has no referee, there's one more thing I want to share, because I see very few reaction videos mentioning it. Shocking content always has a greater chance of going viral. A giant soda will attract more views than a regular breakfast. A 10-layer burger will go viral more easily than a plate of salad. The algorithm also inadvertently encourages that. So sometimes what we watch the most is not the most popular, but just the most intriguing. In your opinion, if social media continuously shows us extreme images from both sides, are we misunderstanding how Americans and Europeans actually eat every day? If you also enjoy these multifaceted perspectives, please like and subscribe to support the channel. And in the next part, we will finally piece together the last part, where we will set aside the talk of pizza, bread, or fries to look at something much more important. Behind every meal is an entire economic system, supply chain, and food management philosophy. Perhaps that is where the real difference between America and Europe lies. At this point, I think we have reached the most important piece of the entire video. If you only look at a slice of pizza, a loaf of bread, or a giant soda, it's easy to conclude that this is a battle between American food and European food. But the deeper I dig, the more I realize that the problem has never been with the food itself. It lies in the system that created that dish. Try to imagine food as the tip of an iceberg. What we see is just the hamburger, the fries, or the loaf of bread. But beneath the surface is what determines the shape of the entire iceberg. Production methods, distribution methods, regulatory management, consumer culture, and even economic pressure. Therefore, if we only judge the visible part and ignore the submerged part, we might completely misunderstand the whole story. Let's go back to the initial reaction segments. A giant soda. The portion of fries filled the tray. The bread has a longer list of ingredients than expected. Initially, those images were very shocking, but when placed in a broader context, they begin to take on a different meaning. A system with a large population scale, supply chains spanning thousands of kilometers, and a massive retail network will often prioritize stability, shelf life, price, and convenience. That doesn't mean all products are the same or all choices are the same, but it explains why businesses often optimize according to criteria very different from many European countries. You see, what we call differences in food is actually differences in the way the entire system operates. On the other hand, many European countries are often mentioned for their stricter regulations regarding the origin of ingredients, additives, or food labeling. That creates a different philosophy, prioritizing traceability, standards, and consistency in management. But I also want to emphasize something very important. This is not a story of who is right and who is wrong. Each system is trying to solve different problems. One side has to serve a huge consumer market with a very high demand for convenience. On the other hand, they place more emphasis on standards and regulations. If we only look at the final result on the dining table without considering the underlying problems, it is easy to draw overly simplistic conclusions for a matter that is inherently very complex. That's also why I want to revisit the images we saw at the beginning of the video. That burger is not just a burger. That soda isn't just soda. That loaf of bread is not just bread. Each dish is like a passport telling the story of where it was born. Behind that are agriculture, logistics systems, consumer culture, business competition methods, and even priorities in food management policies. When viewed from that perspective, online reaction videos naturally cease to be merely entertaining. They become very interesting slices of how different societies operate. And I believe this is also the reason why this topic attracts millions of views. People are not only curious about the food, but also about how a culture is reflected through that food. There is a question I want to leave you with before concluding this part. If tomorrow the same hamburger is made with the same recipe and ingredients, but placed in a different system, would it still be the American hamburger as we envision it? In my opinion, the answer is much more interesting than the debate over whether Italian pizza or American burgers are better. And in the final part, we will conclude the entire debate with a very simple yet very difficult question. After all the analysis, is it really fair to compare European food with American food? Or have we been asking the wrong question from the start? After all that we have just seen, perhaps the answer is not whether American food is better or European food is better. What is worth pondering is that each meal reflects a part of the culture, lifestyle, and the way each society operates. When we understand that, we will stop viewing everything through 3-0-second clips on the internet and gain a more balanced perspective. What about you? If you had the opportunity to choose, would you prioritize large portions and convenience, or simple and high-quality ingredients? Or perhaps you think each model has its own strengths. Please share your opinion in the comments section. I would love to read perspectives from your own experiences. If you find the video offers a new perspective worth contemplating, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next videos where we will continue to analyze interesting stories about economics, society, and culture from multiple viewpoints. This video is created for the purpose of commenting, analyzing, and discussing based on the content, experiences, and opinions shared in the source videos. The content does not aim to assert that every case is correct or representative of the entire United States or all of Europe. Each country, each region, and each food system has its own characteristics, so consider this as a perspective for civilized exchange and discussion. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next videos.